took a little longer than usual to join, Craig.
Yeah, Craig. Slow ass motherfucker.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel a bit out of practice. It's been a while. Renowned and feared. It's me, Trusty Pax.
I thought we were going with a Sylvanian accent, maybe for this whole podcast.
Were you asking me to talk in an accent? Is that what we're going for?
Well, I don't know. I just kind of figured we'd talk like Isabella for the whole 2.5 hours.
That'd be an interesting one. And
I think we'd probably sound more like the Count from the Muppets, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Sylvania.
Weird how only she has an accent.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, he's not actually from Sylvania.
Yeah.
Joining me as always is Archer King.
Hello.
You know him. I know him. We love him. And today we're talking about Vlad von Carstein. I don't know if it's Carstein or Carstein.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused as well. Now that you mention it, I'm like, yeah, it's totally said 2 different ways in game.
Yeah, well, it's like that the movie Young Frankenstein, when everyone calls him Frankenstein, he's like, Frankenstein! So aside from him having to correct everybody, I'm sure. Today we talk about the campaign of 100 turns fighting the Empire. Or at least that's what it was for me.
Yeah, it's literally just the Empire. And Kislev, but Kislev currently has the Empire's roster, so it's just more Empire.
Yeah, by the time I got to Kislev, no, I don't think they even exist. By the time I wiped out the Empire, 120 turns in.
Oh my god!
Yeah,
I didn't play quite that much because my computer was not having the high model count of this campaign. But yeah, I did not get nearly that far.
That's cool. I mean, I really didn't get anything accomplished. I didn't have a lot of time over these past 3 weeks, and it's been very stressful trying to get all this stuff ready for my new job, which hopefully I'll get. But yeah, 100 and freaking. Let me just check real quick. It is painful, man. I do not recommend anybody playing if you're trying to do this for fun on very hard difficulty, at least on the campaign. Maybe I'm being a little bitch, but 115 turns just to wipe out the Empire. And that's quite a long time.
I think that's a conservative estimate too. Like I've taken Altdorf, but a lot of the north is still belonging to the Empire for me, and I'm about 110 turns in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. This was like my 3rd attempt. I tried following. I've watched a lot of streamers, and I went with. I probably pulled it off wrong, but I remember watching a stream a long time ago by Legend of Total War, who said, just basically focus on Castle Drakenhof, kind of just build that up, and then expand afterwards. Okay. And I tried that, but by the time I did, the Reichland had confederated almost everybody and was just sending stacks and stacks of, top tier units at me.
You know what I hate more than anything?
Tell me.
Outriders with grenade launchers.
I hate the Hellstorm rocket batteries more than anything. Even those guys.
At least when I see rocket batteries in their army, I'm like, okay, I can deal with this. I have flying units, I have fast units. At the very least, there's probably some Fellbats kicking around that I can just throw at it. What am I to do about Outriders with grenade launchers? They're faster than everything, and they run away as soon as you catch them.
So I will address that. I actually have a solution, and I got lucky with it. Okay. I think it's a solution.
Please,
but this is the first time we've ever covered the Vampire Count faction. We've covered the Vampire Coasts before, but Vampire Counts are very similar except that they have almost 0 ranged units, which is such a headache for me not to have it. Not to say you don't learn how to make it work. Archer mentioned the Fellbats. You got easy access to a lot of flying units, and you're going to rely on those to, hold down Archer fire and to go after artillery pieces. But it can still be very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for when I kind of gathered from the tabletop too, the vampire counts kind of play as like a flying heavy faction. Like that's kind of their role. Like there's not very many units or factions in the game that can challenge them as much on that.
Yeah.
So it didn't really feel like that in game, but like Vargeist and Fellbats certainly make for a really good starting point anyway.
No, yeah, I felt like the units you start out with, you start out with a bunch of Fellbats. A lot of units of those. You've got one unit of Vargeist, or is it more than that? I think it might be 3. Isn't it?
I believe it's 3. Yeah.
Yeah, you start out with like 5 or 6 Fellbats and 3 Vargeists and
a Blood Knight
and 1 Blood Knight that I lost in a shitty bullshit auto resolve battle like 20 turns in.
Oh god. Fuck, that sucks so bad.
And I haven't recruited any in since whatever turn I left on. I finally think it's kind of bullshit that they're tier 5. I'll get into that in a little bit. They are powerful, but come on, tier 5.
Come on.
Come on.
Yeah.
As to your Outriders, if anybody's played the Empire or has unlucky enough to face them later in their campaign, they're mounted grenade launcher units. Yeah, we've definitely talked about those before because I friggin' love them.
Yeah, I think we talked about it with Marcus at least.
Yes, yeah, we definitely did. The solution I came up with, for the vampire counts, at some point they did a small rework to the faction, and they introduced the Blood Kiss mechanic, which also brought in the vampire bloodlines. There's 4 different bloodlines, and these vampire kisses, it's like another resource. What are you giggling about?
You referred to the blood kisses as vampire kisses, and all I imagined was just like a vampire just being really sweet, like
come here, baby.
Yeah, like Vlad with his like this nasty like poxed face that's like super old and decaying, just like come here.
Well, he's like over 1,000 years old at this point, so maybe I'll look that good. I don't know. Well, I actually tried looking up Blood Kiss on Urban Dictionary because I thought for sure there'd be something there, but nobody's put anything in for a Blood Kiss.
Yeah, that's something I would think would have a
terrible situation.
Yeah, exactly. Something nasty. They're just like, oh, come on.
So blood kisses allow you to unlock the different tiers in the different the bloodlines, which grant you casualty replenishment, research bonuses, as well as some unique units. Blood kisses, the only way to get them is either by defeating a legendary lord in battle. And
well,
also,
it's not legendary lords, it's faction leaders, so you can get it on like generic, which is actually something to watch out for when you're fighting the Empire, because like each elector count, even if they're not like a legendary lord, will get you a blood kiss.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because Volkmar doesn't give you one, but like the elector count of Stirland will give you one. It's like Ulbrich, Hopt, something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Because getting these blood kisses is very difficult at first, I'd say.
Yeah.
Especially since the last way to get them is through assassination, which is the agent that allows you to do that is the Banshee. And unless you get lucky and get one of those free agents that just kind of get hired, getting a Banshee, it takes a long time. Growth is not something the vampires are particularly strong with.
They're not horrible, but definitely like the lower side of average, I think.
Yeah, and one of the things I noticed, that I actually had to have it pointed out by somebody else who was, when I was at work, I was watching somebody else play as the vampire counts, and they pointed out that the units and upkeep are actually more expensive than like your average Empire units. Which once he mentioned it, I did notice. Like a lot of these units cost slightly more than you would think they'd be worth.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Easy 300 upkeep, on like 2 or 3 units.
Well, you can make up for that with the research tree to get free skeletons and free zombies, but zombies are... I don't know why I teched zombies at first. That was a waste of friggin' time.
I was like, oh, free skeletons can be got in 18 turns. Well, I'm going for that.
Yeah, you have to go straight for that.
Yeah, pretty much.
You don't have much of an economy. There are ways you can make money, especially the gold mine, I guess, in Castle Drakenhof.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, getting that Banshee is a son of a bitch, man. But once you get it, that's when you start racking up the blood kisses. Just spec it out for assassination, and just by that time, there's going to be a million agents all over the Empire messing with your units. So at that point,
I honestly think that Banshees are probably, if not the best, one of the best agents in terms of like just using agent actions, because they have the 3 best actions.
Yeah, you're right. You should go ahead and name them, because I didn't even consider putting it in the army once I got them.
Yeah, no, it's you get assassinate, which is significantly better than wound because you can get critical successes, which like permanently kills the character. And they have block army, which is also super useful and usually reserved for like mages and stuff like that. So it's usually harder to actually use. And then they also have damage walls, which is really useful as well, just because you can use it. Like vampire counts don't have very many siege attackers. Vlad himself is about it until you get into like tier 5 units.
Yeah.
Actually, is there anything else? I can't think of one.
The White Kings, or the Whites, that agent can break down gates. The Vargulfs, but yeah, they're a bit later on. Yeah. And I think any vampire agents you hire can do it. Cryptars. Cryptars can break down.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good to know. So yeah, tier 3 units essentially.
You have no siege weapons though. That's killer. Yeah.
No artillery, no missiles, except for Sylvanians.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I was gonna tell you my solution to the Outriders. Then I got
You're like my solution, and then we started talking about like Vlad pecking people.
Well, the reason why I got distracted was because in the bloodlines under the von Carstein bloodline, in the lore, and I've had different perspectives on this. They actually had a lot of living soldiers. Like they definitely had an undead army, but they also had a living army.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go down that bloodline, you can get the first tier grants you access to, I think, increased replenishment and Sylvanian crossbowmen.
Yes.
And granted, you can only get one of those for a little bit, but eventually, I don't know the exact how many turns go by, but you can eventually hire more. And I got to tell you, the difference of just having 2 units of crossbowmen in my main army was... Maybe they're better units and I'm not mid-maxing like I should be, but I was just like so grateful because I dealt with those Outriders and I just had my crossbowmen just like, peck them down. Okay.
Yeah, I honestly didn't even try for the ranged units because I was like, oh, 1 isn't going to do me any good. So yeah, I just never bothered. Just throw another skeleton in there.
Yeah, well, I think that it doesn't like it's kind of like those electric count troops. Like unless you hire it, it doesn't like start like the countdown to where you can hire it again.
Right.
So it does kind of suck when you have that just 1 crossbow unit. But every once in a while you're not too unhappy with it. Like it's helpful to shoot at those those Imperial Knights or just returning some fire.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you can keep them alive, because I almost lost them a few times because of the freaking Hellstorm rocket batteries.
And AI Empire is like, what should I bring? 10 Reichsguard? Sure.
Yeah, well, they're tough to bring down, man. The skeletons are not very strong against anything that's armored.
You just blob and like let them like crash into your blob until they get worn down enough.
Until they're exhausted, and then you drop the Vargeists on them.
Yeah, I've never used so many Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma on a unit. I'm just like, please die.
Oh my god. Yeah, between them and the artillery, man, It's just, and even just the riflemen, they can take out your Vargeists so fast if they get.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like your answer to their ranged units is flying units. So like Vargeists, like Fellbats they can defeat handgunners in combat, like in a vacuum, but for the most part, they're going to be supported, and you're probably going to lose them a lot. And Vargeists get absolutely shredded by handgunners.
Yeah.
It's like your counter to their counter is their counter to your counter. So it's just like who can get the better engagement.
Exactly. This was, I mean, it's a very, there's different ways you can take these battles, but most of the time you're just kind of, thank God for the Vanguard deployment, which Vlad von Carstein has. Because your slow shambling hordes take so long to get up to the enemy's front line, and even just archers are going to start. I mean, you can revive your units with the Invocation of Nahek, but all the way, like, that's just wasting Winds of Magic. You really want to be casting more offensive spells, because those are going to be really most of your source of damage for a little while.
Yeah, exactly.
There is another unique thing about this faction, which is you actually have access to 2 legendary lords right off the bat.
Yes.
You can hire Isabella turn 1, basically.
Yeah, I'm pretty on board with the idea to just make it Vlad and Isabella is a lord you can recruit right off the bat, but not necessarily like a different legendary lord, if that makes sense. I think the vampire count should get like a replacement for her, if that makes sense, because it's the exact same campaign.
Yeah, I mean, most of them are the exact same campaign except for Kemmler. What is it? Manfred von Carstein and Helman Gorst both start in Castle Drakenhof.
Yeah.
And that's one, that's just a skip away from that crappy little town that von Carstein starts in.
Yeah, which is, so you essentially have 3 starting positions, and I mean 3 really different campaigns that are going to play fairly similarly.
I've been seeing a lot of people in the past talk about how the Vampire Lords needed an update, and I had a lot of fun because I've never really gotten used to this faction. I kept putting mods in that granted me access to skeleton archers, because it just drove me crazy. I'm like, if I'm a friggin' necromancer, I'm gonna put some bows and into the hands of my skeletons. I don't know.
I never got that desperate. I didn't think I was gonna really like them based on their playstyle, because I always play very ranged. I'm that guy when I play high elves. I'm like, I'll take 2 spearmen and 18 archers, thank you.
And you have even the option of just having them both with the Sea Guard, if you really want to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a very missile-centered player for the most part, if I can get by with it.
No, so am I. That was the difficult thing. You really have to work on managing your magic a lot, picking your heroes and having them be effective. And then it's almost like you have cavalry. I mean, you got air cav because of all the airborne units you have. And at least in the beginning of the campaign, the Vargeists and Fellbat, the Vargeists are up power. I keep them into my army all the way till the end.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I did.
But the Fellbats are even useful. Like you said, if you get them in a vacuum against even handgunners, they will, unless the leadership is so high, like if they're experienced or whatever, you're gonna either lock them down and so they can't fire at anything, or you will end up defeating them. And Fellbats are pretty damn cheap, and you can recruit them almost. They're a tier 1 unit, so not very hard to get a hold of.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you can't raise dead with them very often. You actually need a larger battle to get them. But
yeah, I don't really agree with that. I don't think Fellbat should, require a battle to unlock them. I don't think they're.
Give me Fellbats and direwolves with no consequences, and fuck skeletons, honestly. Unless there's a battle.
Yeah, it's very difficult to run down enemies without without having the Fellbats or the Vargeists, because
Mhm.
skeletons are not catching up to anybody.
No. And like N tier necromancers on the Mortis engine have like 25 speed or something like that. They're stupid slow.
Yeah. And the only real cavalry. Oh no, you do get access to like mid-tier cavalry.
Yep.
I forget what they're called.
Black Knights, and then there's Black Knights with lances and barding.
Yeah, which are still anti-infantry and not even
Yep.
anti-large.
No, the Blood Knights are better for that, like cavalry to cavalry attacks. But I use the Black Knights with lances quite a bit.
Oh, you did?
Mostly, yeah, like, just because once I had free skeletons, it was easier for me to, I don't know why, get cavalry. I think it was just the province that I took over, and it happened to have the building for it. So I just got Black Knights in a couple armies just to have some mobility rather than just my character and 19 settlements or 19 skeletons.
Yeah, those the dire wolves. I never found too much of a use with Vlad, particularly just because you have easy access to the Fellbats and the Vargeist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I did use the Black Knights a couple times, but it was weird on my last campaign. Like it's I got lucky. I literally collected almost everybody. I had Manfred and Helman Gorst because I confederated with them in my first campaign that ended up in failure. And
Okay.
yeah, and I got really lucky because there were a lot of huge battles that happened very close by since I wasn't expanding. So I got easy access to like some, like the Terrorgeists, and just I got easy access to high tier units, but just didn't get so lucky on this last playthrough. Like I was lucky if I could resurrect some Graveguard. There wasn't many options for me.
Yeah. I actually, this is kind of we were emailing back and forth over the week, and I mentioned that I had somewhat of a twist.
Oh yeah.
And like right now in the game, Manfred is a fucking powerhouse. He will sweep the Empire if you play as Franz or Gelt really quickly.
Yes.
And even like Vlad, he will stomp all around you. He took half the Empire while I was trying to get rid of Averheim. He absolutely just like explodes right away. And I was like, okay, like maybe I can get an alliance with him, but I'm never going to be able to confederate him. And half or like 3/4 of the Empire is going to be his before I'm done. So like this campaign is mostly going to be me watching Manfred. So I restarted. I was like, fuck that. And I took Castle Drakenhof on turn 2 and destroyed Manfred.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did in my last campaign.
Yeah.
But when I confederated with him, he didn't have so much luck, honestly. Like he kind of burst out for a little while, and then he got beat back, and that's when I was able to confederate him. Like he did not have that great of a start. But it gave me access to him and Helmand, but at that point things weren't looking so hot.
Yeah. And then the other thing I did too was Azeg has the trait in diplomacy for vampiric influence.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so he can be like easily swayed, quote unquote, by vampires, which doesn't make a huge difference in very hard, but it is actually the difference between him liking you and not liking you. So he does actually have some affinity for you in the beginning. And I was able to turn him like into my vassal that I just like pointed him at the dwarves.
That's awesome.
It was like one of the coolest things I've done in this game. It's just been like, get him, Azeg. Like I didn't have to fight the dwarves barely at all. I was just like, you can have all this territory. I'm just taking the Empire.
Damn, that's pretty lucky. He never attacked me, so I was grateful for that. But he was another guy that didn't last. I think he lasted probably about like 50 or 60 turns for me.
Yeah. I just kind of had the idea, so I was like, maybe we'll like try. Like I gave him some money at some point to like make sure he survived, and then once he was doing really well, it was awesome.
Smart move, man. I felt like I was constantly broke, and like on my last campaign, I just went all out as offensively as I could against the Empire just to try and keep them from getting to their high tier units.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what prevented me from getting like using that raise dead mechanic, because a lot of the battles I fought were in settlements, and because I was going after just the minor elector counts at first.
Right.
Yeah, they just didn't have anything that was too devastating. But every time I got Reichland backed into a corner, they just confederated another elector count. It was driving me friggin' crazy, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm like, how are they confederating when they're so weak? I had them down to like 2 settlements, and then he just confederates like Midland, and then when I'm beating him down there, he confederates Nordland and then Osterland, and it was just, driving me crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually kind of targeted Gelt right away, because as soon as he gets like far along, he's so annoying to deal with, because he basically does fire damage with all his spells, and he can cast them like crazy. Not that AI Gelt is like that crazy, but I just didn't want to deal with it. So after Averheim, I just went straight west towards him.
Mm.
And eventually he was actually in Fort Sol, and that was his only settlement, just sitting there with a 10 stack. So there was just like this giant siege and like Gelt's last stand in this fort.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah.
I mean, this campaign was definitely full of huge battles for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was awesome. Like the AI Empire will bring like 2 armies at once, like together, and you have, I mean, personally, I brought like 2 pretty much like partners with each other. Like Vlad and Isabella were with each other, and some of my others were like partnered up, just because like one army of just skeletons isn't really enough to go like 1v1 with the Empire.
No, they'll get shredded very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
When Vlad and Isabella reinforce each other, one of the special things is that they both get plus 15 to melee attack and defense.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty considerable for a stat buff. Also, Isabella, one of her effects is all of her embedded vampire heroes get plus 10 melee and defense. Mm-hmm. So she was going around with the vampire girl squad. All of my vampires went into her army. I would only I don't know if you thought about doing that, but I thought it was kind of fun, because I've never really done a hero-centered army. And like, I had like a powerful vampire of death and one of shadows, because gotta have Pit of Shades.
Yeah.
And like, I made 2 of them like primary spellcasters, but the rest of the vampire heroes, I just made them to be like, really good fighters.
Yeah.
And I had some weird battles where I had like basically Isabella and like 4 or 5 other vampires like take on an army almost by themselves. I mean, granted,
like one wind of death is good enough for like some armies if they want to bunch up enough.
Yeah, in this case, I didn't have it, but they were just a bunch of like swordsmen and spearmen, and it was pretty funny watching them just go through waves of swordsmen, because they like flip off of them, and I don't know, they do some cool acrobatic moves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't actually stack vampires with Isabella. I used Vargeist more so, because she does buff them as well.
Yeah, she does.
And then like I usually had 1 vampire per army besides my lord, and they kind of led the like flying squad is what I referred to it in my head, which is like Vargeist or like Felbats, whatever I had, and then they would kind of either target lords, like specifically if they had a huntsman general, or they would stop faster units because they had a little bit more speed. So if some outriders or knights like started to come after my Vargeist, they would kind of intercept and hold them off for a bit, because they've got crazy regen.
Yeah.
And I was like, they're just gonna heal anyway.
Yeah, vampires are very cool in that they're powerful spellcasters and powerful in melee. You throw some items onto them, and they're, you'll buff them up even more. And it's pretty nice.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's like really ironic actually that their unit card says decent melee combatant, and I'm like, I don't know, they're kind of soloing like a unit by themselves while taking no damage. I think that's a little bit better than decent.
Yeah, you can eventually get this another ability that like on each vampire once they level up enough to where it's like a burst of HP regeneration that doesn't even cost any winds of magic.
Yeah, and they also have the ability to get the hunger, which is regeneration while they're in combat.
And mine were pretty much in combat every battle, like the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why not? Why not? You know, they're regenerating. So
yeah, like I've never been so hurt by the healing cap, just because. Yeah, I could probably not be like the vampires could probably not be defeated just by having their healing capabilities with their heroes, just because everyone gets it except for necromancers.
I didn't. I basically only used necromancers as agents. Like I think I had like 2. I kind of forgot about them after a while. I had one that I had one that was constantly like stealing technology while leveling up. Because that small Skaven clan that's in the mountains to your south in like the Zufbar region, and then there's one to the north.
Yes.
And a cheesy way I level up agents is just having them go discover Skaven undercities because it doesn't cost you any money. So that's a quick way of buffing up their like success chance, and why not do that instead of having them get wounded every time you try to have them do something.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. The necromancers are like some of the best casters in the game. They actually get Raise Dead and Invocation of the Heck cheaper than like Vlad or Isabella, like your actual main lords.
Yeah,
so you can just kind of spam it actually.
No, I definitely used them a lot when I played as the Barrow Legion. But I think in this one, I was just so focused on trying to like. I was like, I've never really used vampires. I'm not the biggest fan of vampires. I kind of am now, but I was just trying to churn out those vampire heroes to go into Isabella's stack. I was just, I don't know. I was having fun with that. I also wanted to make a vampire army because a lot of your units are not actually vampires. Blood Knights are actually vampires, which explains why they're so powerful. I think they also have, they have. I thought they could regenerate, but maybe not.
No, the Regiment of Renown does, but they do not. But they do have Frenzy.
Yes. And they have Flag of the Bloodkeep. While they're engaged in melee, they get 22% missile resistance.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Oh, that's sweet.
They also have high armor already, so doing all right. I do not dispute how powerful Blood Knights are. They can take down, Empire Knights like nobody's business.
Yeah, Reichsguard, Empire Knights. Bye.
See ya. Unfortunately, once I lost my first unit of them, I never saw them again. So.
They do really well against demis, even with like the halberd variant, just because they have a higher model count.
Yeah, they do.
So they can like fully surround, because they have like twice as many actual models compared to demis with halberds. So they do pretty well against them. They trade decent.
And it's a shame because I was leveling up Vlad to like buff them because like my plan was to like throw a bunch of Blood Knights in with them, and it just never happened because it was constantly. I was always moving away from my like settlements that were leveling up, and I just could never recruit them because I was perpetually chasing the Empire all the way west to take out the Golden Order, take Altdorf, and then he just confederated everybody north and east of him. So I went in this weird counterclockwise motion across the Empire until I conquered it. So literally, I was just returning to like my main settlement in my final turns recently.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, Vlad's triumphant return to Sylvania.
Yeah, I definitely didn't like just straight push. I kind of like circled around. That makes sense. Like I'd push one way, push another way, just depending on like who was weaker and where Reichland was.
I think I was just so scared because I was looking at my saved games. I did make it about 85 turns in that failed campaign, and it was just so many Empire armies were coming at me, and I was too stupid. I didn't give Vlad lightning strike, and I could not take on those armies. They had so much artillery, you know, it was just not possible for me to take them on.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I didn't think lightning strike was going to be super useful, and I kind of stand by it, to be honest, because even if I was like 1v1ing armies, like you take so much damage with your skeletons, which is fine, like whatever, you can just raise more, but that's, I don't know, it slowly drains how much money you have. Like it's going to take a significant amount of your upkeep, so you're never really like saving money because you're constantly like, oh, I need 300 200 gold to like get a couple more oh sorry, not gold, dark magic, but you need it to like raise skeletons constantly, just like replenish your units. So even if you're doing that, just because you can get full replenishment and be fine for the next battle, you're going to be damaged after that, and also it's going to cost you, I don't know, for me I had to like get like 3 new skeletons every time just to like refill what I had, and that was with like overcasting invocation to keep most of my blob healthy.
Yeah, I tried to do that thing too when the enemy was fleeing the field. I try and gather all my like Vargeists in one spot and then just keep hitting them with the overcasted invocation into heck. And
yeah,
I could usually get them back to a full model count before the battle was over if I didn't have
for
to
the most
cast.
part.
Yeah,
as long as the healing cap didn't come in, they were always healthy.
Yeah. And once the model comes back, that specific model gets fully healed by the end of the battle. So as long as you revive them, you know. Vlad also starts with 10% extra campaign movement range for all characters. So that can stack very quickly. And I think, like we were talking about the Banshee earlier, although I never put it in my army, I think that also gives you extra movement range to the army as well.
Yeah, she does have increased mobility.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I can only imagine how far Vlad could go, because he was in forced march a lot, so he's picking up those traits. I feel, man, Vlad could cross absurd distance as well as Isabella at a certain point. That was really nice.
Yeah, it does come in handy like a lot of the time when you're just like, oh, I want to attack that settlement, because the Empire has a lot of really stretched out provinces, like Tabalikland, for instance, is just stupid. Like there's just 4 settlements on like weird random corners, and you got to take all of them to like actually hold the province. And you can be like 2 turns away from a city and still be in the same province.
Meanwhile, the Empire is recruiting another great army, maybe a city or 2 away. So
yeah, exactly.
It's good to have those walls, you know, between you and the Empire. I see that extra turn. What else? There's also unique buildings in Castle Drakenhof for Vlad. Pretty much all the vampire counts. There's also a couple other unique buildings across the Empire once you take certain settlements.
Yeah.
So there's additional ways to buff up the Blood Knights. You get public order bonuses from certain and from these buildings, as well as vampire corruption.
Yeah.
Which vampire corruption, it's I'm okay with it. I like seeing the land get corrupted as I'm expanding. And
I was waiting for that.
Yeah, you know, that's my favorite thing, to see the world literally change from my influence.
Yeah,
you got to build that Balefire, or was it Witchfire or something? There's a building there's a building that spreads the corruption to surrounding provinces, and the attrition does help a little bit. So it's nice to have, like, once my empire got big enough, every time the dwarves tried to come in, they'd usually sack a city, which was driving me crazy. And then on their way out, they'd take enough attrition to where they wouldn't be back for a little bit. But I wish more happened with it, because looking into the lore of the vampires, like basically the whole reason for this corruption is, although the vampires can fight out in the sunlight, it does make them considerably weaker. Because like the sun kind of dispels like vampire magic essentially, and I like the idea of like gathering storm clouds to blot out the sun wherever you go.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I just wish it gave like maybe more bonuses to your units, or maybe better regeneration since you're not standing out in direct sunlight. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's probably getting into like a bigger issue because like Warhammer 2 has a pretty small map selection. And the amount of times you're like actually fighting at night or like fighting when it's dark or yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's quite a bit. Maybe Warhammer 3. That'd be dope.
Yeah,
nice to see.
Yeah, there's a mod out there that gives you actually, I think it's a random weather effects depending on where you are. So if you're like up farther north, like it could be either like rain or snow. I think sometimes it gives you night battles. I haven't used it at all just because I think during the daytime it's easier to see.
Mm-hmm. Rome 2 had a mechanic like that where you could attack something and it would load in and be like, okay, it's foggy. Do you want to attack right now? Or you can wait and like hopefully wait for a better weather window. So if it was like foggy, you're like, I've got a lot of missile units, which they get like a negative, or they get like debuffed a little bit, so their accuracy is lower. Like you wait for it to be sunny so that there's no effects and you're kind of on an even playing field. So yeah, that'd be nice to see.
Man, that would be. Now you got me thinking that'd be badass if like the enemy is going into like Sylvania where your corruption's like maxed out and you have no missile units. Essentially, it would be cool if, like it was constantly like in a fog where the enemy missile units had like 50% penalty to range or something like that. Like, because you think I don't know. I feel like that's what it looks like from the campaign map that you'd be dealing with.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
See. We talked about Raised Dead before in the Vampire Coast. It's essentially the same thing here. Sometimes you can get really easy access to high tier units depending on what kind of army you defeat.
Yeah.
And so if you get lucky, sometimes you can, it's all of a sudden you can stack out an army instantly and really set you above every other, faction around you. But it's very situation dependent.
Yeah, Vargheists were pretty common. I never got Blood Knights. I was kind of waiting for that to happen. Black Knights came up quite a bit, but that was about it.
I never saw Blood Knights either, but I did get access to like Terrorgeists, some of the Corpse Carts, like all the different variations of those. I was able to get access to. And what are those? The Karn Wraiths. I'm a big fan of those.
Yeah, they're sweet. They're like, they're faster than Empire, so you can kind of like catch up to something. They're good for like flanking or for actually even chasing like handgunners and stuff like that, because they don't take as much damage because they're not armored, right? They're like all magical damage, so they hit pretty hard and they're decent against missile units just because they can get there faster and also will like cut through them really quick.
Yeah, they also have like 75% magic or physical resist, not magic resist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and Strider, so no speed penalties for any sort of terrain that they cross because they are floating.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they are floating. It wouldn't make sense if they're just like, there's a hill. They're like, oh no, I can't float up hills as fast.
So should go jogging more, or whatever they do.
Did you use the Hex Wraiths at all?
Not in this campaign. I use them a lot as Kemler, just because you start out as them. But with Vlad, I know what they are like as a unit. I think they're pretty badass. I don't know how much you got to use them in this campaign.
Very little. A couple times I got them from Raised Dead, but that was about it.
Yeah, I like them a lot. But the biggest thing about Vlad was just having the Vanguard deployment. Because, like I said, playing the Barrow Legion before a lot, I didn't realize how much easier the game is. Like, I think the quest battle where you get his sword Blood Drinker, I wasn't sure if I was going to get to that quest battle because it was basically an objective that was sitting around for 100 turns that I could just never had time because I was constantly going against the Empire.
Yeah.
But I tried doing the battle like about 2 hours ago. I just loaded it up from like that choose the quest battle screen.
Okay, yep.
And it doesn't factor in that all of your units have Vanguard deployment. So you start really far away and you've got rocket batteries really far away from you.
Shit.
You've got crappy units. You've got mostly zombies and skeletons. Like, you get a couple of okay things. But
that's the hard thing about loading quest battles like that. It's like you don't get to choose your unit, so you just end up with a pile of shit. And like, yeah, in this case, at the end of a Hellstorm rocket battery.
yeah, I was just like, oh, this is some BS, especially when more rocket batteries came in from one of the other angles.
Yeah, exactly.
But because when I got to do it, like I was surprised I actually made it to there. But when you do that quest battle in the campaign, you can basically surround them right at the start and just pile on, and they can't do a damn thing about it. Made that quest battle absurdly trivial, honestly.
Yeah, that one was, I don't know. For me, it wasn't crazy easy, but it was probably the easier of the two.
Maybe because when I did it, I think I was at turn like 110.
yeah, like super late game stuff, so it's like pretty easy.
Well, that was the thing that kind of bothered me. I'd like to try to do quest battles like soon when they're available, because I feel like it's more like cinematic that way. Like it, especially getting access to, you know, the powerful quest items.
Yeah, like, you want the item earlier, and also you've been kind of working toward it, like through the objective, so you feel like, you know, you've kind of gotten to this point and want to do the battle right away because it's the next logical step.
Yeah, I just couldn't do it because the Empire was so friggin' aggressive. I could not stop. Like, if I did not waste a turn that was not spent either attacking the Empire or one of their allies, I was just constantly fighting. And
do you know if AI gets Legendary Lord defeat traits?
You know, I don't know that.
Because I'm wondering if, like, Volkmar and Franz, like the amount of times that they actually came at me, I can't recall if I actually defeated Vlad. But in case you don't know, or in case anyone listening doesn't know, his Legendary Lord defeat trait is -4 wound recovery time. So basically, like 1 or 2 turns, depending on the character, for them to come back if they get wounded. So I'm wondering if the AI gets that, if they ever like beat you in a battle and then they can just like come back constantly.
I feel like they can do that anyway. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's in the list of AI cheats already, but it certainly felt like I was like, Carl, I just killed you.
Yeah, you just like smack him down. He shows up and it's just like summon the electric
there's just clones of him sitting in the back room.
Yeah, exactly. You just knock one down, the next one stands up. The nation calls.
Yeah, I know Isabella lost. I don't know if because I lost Isabella once to either it was the Grand Theogenist, whatever his name is,
Volkmar
the Grim. Yeah, Isabella lost to him once, and I lost a few vampires with that. I was pretty upset, but so I wonder if Volkmar got regeneration. That'd be interesting to know, because that would be just terrible if, you know, losing Isabella. If you don't know, if you defeat Isabella, you get regeneration on whichever lord defeated her, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, between Vlad and Isabella, you get like 2 of the best defeat traits, which is why it's awesome to play as the Empire, because you're just like, I'll take those, thank you.
Yeah, before anybody else can.
Yeah, that would suck to have regeneration on Volkmar because he's already a fucking tank.
Yeah, I know. And I fought him so many damn times.
I did too. The nice thing is his defeat trait is actually good too. It's like +3 melee attack and defense for everything in your army, which if you just have like a ton of skeletons, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, no, I was happy when I got that, because I had a few different, like, even just backup lords who, like, sometimes, you know, Vlad was just a little bit too far away, but he could make it there in forced march. So I think there was a couple of like my regular lords that picked up that trait as well. So it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
And that and Boris Todbringer, I had to fight that guy like 20 times.
Oh yeah, for me, Boris was just like being an ass like he normally does, and just like gave the middle finger to Franz in the first little bit and got wiped. So I never even saw him.
For me, it was like as I was finishing up the Empire, it was like every 5 turns, hey, it's me, fucking Toddy. That's what I kept hearing in my head every time. I was just like, God damn it, Toddy. Him, Carl, and Volkmar just over and over again coming at me.
All up in your face, yeah.
Yeah. And Boris was a big fan of those rocket batteries. Let me tell you. Yeah. So tell me, how did you ever play as the vampire counts before?
I kind of tried them before, yeah. When we were kind of talking about it, I actually loaded up like Vlad and Manfred and played a couple terms each, just to, like kind of see, like, okay, like I kind of get the gist of it, kind of comparing it to what we've played before, seeing how much it shakes it up and stuff like that. And I've also played, I don't know, maybe 30 turns of Bad Gandalf. And yeah, so not really. This was my first like full campaign for sure. And like, yeah, beyond like your first, sort of setting up sort of thing.
It was just kind of, this was definitely my first time going this many turns into it. I think I got pretty far with Bad Gandalf before.
Yeah.
But I just got, it was taking a mental toll on me fighting waves of Empire over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I am kind of hoping, now I'm on board with getting a new Vampire Lord for DLC, because I'm a big fan of the Strigoi. I don't know if you're, those like bestial looking Vampire Lords.
The spiky boys.
Yeah, and they got
hedgehogs.
Yeah, they get a starting point down in the Southlands, I think.
Yeah, is it just the Strigoi Empire?
Yeah, it might. I think it is.
Which is funny because their leader's like a necromancer when you talk to him.
Oh, that
like in the
sense.
diplomacy screen.
That's just CA.
Oh, Warhammer too.
But I realized kind of how that was kind of the reason why I stayed away from everybody but Kemmler, was because I saw the other two start points for, 4 out of the 5 start basically right next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, just Empire, maybe some dwarves if you get lucky. I fought them a couple times.
Yeah. I think the other thing too, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but Heinrich Kemmler is primarily fighting Bretonnia in the beginning, which I think would be a little bit harder just because there's such a cavalry heavy faction even from the beginning. So that mobility will almost instantly kill you, and you have almost no answer against heavily armored anti-large knights.
No.
Like they're going to hammer and anvil you pretty much anything. Like there's not a whole lot you can do about it because flying dominance doesn't really give you anything because they're going to have hippogriff knights, and you're going to have a lot of money to like just have blood knights go up against like knights of the realm, right?
Yeah, and it takes so long to unlock the blood knights.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, where Kemmler starts out, you get one of those minor dwarf factions to in that same mountain range. Like it's almost impossible to unite your starting province.
Yeah.
I've seen certain people have strategies where, I don't want to focus on Kemmler, but yeah, he's got it really hard over there. But I don't know. I've tortured myself.
Did you fight the dwarves much?
They usually would just be in auto resolve battles, because there was one of the settlements in Averland that every time I was about to build the walls around the settlement, they would just come out of that mountain range. That
yes, okay.
Yeah, I couldn't do anything about it.
Is the worst. Yeah, no. Every time I was like, you take that settlement is Grenzat, and you take it, and you're like, okay, fantastic. And then you move to Averheim to secure the province. You get the capital, and then they're just like, yeah, we'll declare war on you, and we'll also take the settlement right away. And I was like, I didn't even know we were at war 2 seconds ago, and now you have my settlement. I have to go back and take it from you. And also, I found dwarves to be harder than Empire.
I definitely would agree with you. It's just that like I said, most of them were auto resolve battles.
Yeah,
and I see what you mean, because they're very resistant to magic, and that's like one of my favorite strategies is just launching an overcasted Wind of Death down to line of great swords and watch them disappear.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like they've got magic resistance. Their infantry is better than the Empire's, like just straight up, like dwarf warriors will beat swordsmen, and they also have really good artillery. So they don't have that mobility, and it's probably going to just be like two fat lines smacking each other. But they're going to take a significant chunk out of you to begin with because AI dwarfs, and I mean, if you're playing dwarfs, you should probably bring a shit ton of artillery anyway. But they have just straight hard counters to you, and the only thing you can really do is bring flying units.
Yeah, when I did have success against the dwarves, I made this weird formation. You have to have some grave guard with the great weapons, which are kind of hard to get because you need to level up that armory to like that ancient reliquary.
I honestly never bothered just because skeletons are free.
Yeah, but so basically I would have, for a long time, Vlad had a bunch of skeletons, that were right out in front.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had some regular grave guard, and then I would have probably like 2 or 3 grave guard with great weapons. And whenever I fought the dwarves, which I only fought them in like maybe the early to mid game, and then they kind of backed off for a while, I'd clump up all my skeletons in front and made almost like a T formation where it was long ways going into them, like, and they would kind of envelop the skeletons. And I did kind of a thing where once they all bunched up around the skeletons, the great swords would just kind of work their way around them. And as long as the Vargeist and the Velbats were tying up the Quarrelers, I could kind of just chop away at them. And then dropping some spells in there, even if they're resistant, kind of work out. But I never really went up against them when they had advanced artillery.
I fought one battle. I was actually just recruiting like a brand new lord, so he was like level 1, and I had like a level 1 necromancer with him, and some basic skeletons, and I ended up just like raising dead a unit of direwolves and a unit of black knights, just the basic ones, because they had 2 iron drakes with them and a flame cannon and like 3 longbeards and a lord, and that was it. But I was just like terrified of them because I was like, if I blob up, those iron drakes will absolutely just wreck my shit. And it was like, I don't find vampire counts that micro intensive because for the most part you're throwing just like a blob at them and using like your cavalry or your flying units to kind of flank and fuck around. But with this one, it was almost Bretonia levels where I was just like, okay, we got to hit here, we got to do this, like get around them, make sure that the iron drakes like don't have any point where they're firing. They'd like get smacked by the black knights, they'd pull out, and as soon as they would like recover and get up and kind of get back in line, the wolves would come and hit them from behind. So I was just like, you're not firing, you're not ever firing.
No, there definitely was exciting moments where you're right, like your mainline infantry, you'd set them and forget them almost. Mm-hmm. And just having that extreme mobility that the airborne units provide, it does get pretty sweaty. I would be trying to lock down certain missile units or artillery pieces whenever they weren't guarded. Like sometimes I would use one force to distract, and then another unit to drop down on them, do some damage just to get them get off their cannons or what have you, and then get them out of there.
Mm-hmm.
So that aspect, I've even it's weird. They're a fairly mobile faction on the battlefield. If that's the route you go down.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely, I learned early on, since you have a bunch of Felgbats and Vargeists, they can be pretty effective for taking cities early on. While Vlad spends his day kicking down the gate by himself.
Yeah, that's so accurate.
just angrily just beat the shit out of it.
There were so many battles, fuck me. There were so many battles where like my Vargeists or whatever I had would kind of like fly in and target the gunners or artillery if they had a lot of it. And Vlad would just be sitting there like smacking the gate and casting spells essentially because that was all he could do. I'm not going to put him on a ladder because if that ladder happens to go down, he just like is wounded, which would be very fitting actually.
How he dies.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't about to do that because ladders are pretty glitchy. So a bunch of skeletons were climbing the walls, but yeah, Vlad was just like slowly booting down the gate. Most of the time, he never made it in. He was just kind of sitting there casting.
Let me in.
Yeah. So yeah, actually though.
Yeah, it was fairly nice because usually, like you said, I play pretty similar to you with missile. Like I like having a lot of missile units,
Mhm.
and you can do damage to units on a wall with archers, but they're pretty well protected up there.
Yeah.
So I would always have the Fellbats kind of hit the archers from the front, and then the Vargeist would just fly over and then immediately turn around and hit them in the rear. And
Mhm.
you could get archers or the gunners to break in not too. It wouldn't take long for them to break because all of your units cause fear, which is an awesome thing.
Yeah, it's actually really good, especially against not so useful against dwarves, which is I would say your second most like the faction you're going to play against the second most. But yeah, Empire has pretty weak frontline infantry, so that is really useful. Their leadership is not really high enough for them to stick around very long.
No, and that's the funny thing is, like, especially in the early game when I had just a bunch of zombies, like they basically killed nobody, yet the army broke and ran.
Yeah,
So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Did you ever fight the Wood Elves?
I didn't. No, they never made it that way. They kind of were just chilling in Athelloren, and like I said, I honestly didn't get as far as I would like in this campaign. I was kind of halfway through taking Reichland before I ran out of time. So I've taken Altdorf, but I never really got all that close to them because I never ended up in the mountains. I was not at war with Carrick Zorn or anything like that. So no, I didn't.
Well, I don't know if those specific ones made it out of Athelloren. To me, it was that sub faction that's kind of sitting up in Midland.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, whatever they're called.
Lorelorn Forest.
Yeah, they just randomly declared war on me while I was trying to get rid of the Reichland because they had just started confederating all the other Electrocouts.
Yeah.
And fighting the Wood Elf army is... I couldn't beat them. I tried the same battle like 4 times, and then finally I gave up, loaded a save that was a turn before, and just like ran in the other direction.
Now that you mention it, like, fuck, that would suck. It's just straight missiles versus no missiles, and they're fast enough to kind of keep out of your way. So yeah, that would be a nightmare.
Dude, it was, and they had a very good mix. Like it was a well-balanced army. They did have a lot of archers, but they also had a lot of treekin that was fairly spread out.
Mhm.
And I could just not do damage fast enough. And they're also, I think, the treekin, I think, are resistant to magic. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, it's not significantly high, but it's higher than like average. And they also have just like, really good resistances, period. So they don't deal that much damage, but they'll hold for a long time just because they don't really take that much.
Yeah, so, yeah, I could not... I don't recommend fighting Wood Elves. It was a very humbling experience. Like,
I don't recommend fighting Wood Elves as like literally anyone.
yeah, we've never had this is why I'm looking forward to the one day when we'll get news about the DLC. I want to do a Wood Elf campaign, but not as it is now. Not at all.
I actually loaded up a Durthu campaign like 2 nights ago because I was just like, man, why don't I just play Wood Elves right now? And then I was like, oh yeah, this sucks.
I mean, kind of like Durthu, and I got like 30 or 40 turns in, and I was like, this is not fun.
No, it's not. I'm just like, I need Amber for this. I'm like, where would I even get that?
It's a shame because the units are actually really cool. Like, I like their roster a lot.
Yeah, in terms of actual like battles, I think they're going to be one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's looking like it. So, see, I think it's kind of interesting because you said you fought the dwarves the second most. Yeah. I barely like I was saying, I had a couple encounters with them, but most of them were just in auto resolves. Like I would wait until they got kind of beaten down by attrition because they kept like at first they didn't declare war on me. They just kept trying to cruise through my territory, and that wasn't working out so well for them.
Yeah.
So I'd usually just pile on like you did. I did the same strategy where I'd have like one real army that was pretty well leveled up, and then I'd have like another lord, maybe from a bloodline, like chasing him with an army of skeletons.
Yeah.
And you can usually auto resolve if you've got the numbers and some quality units and at least one army. But that's where I ended up with a bullshit auto resolve, taking out all my blood knights and like nothing else.
Yeah.
It was such shit. I had like the yellow bar was like 75% full, and my blood knights were the only ones who got tanked.
That's that's so shitty.
Especially when before I forget, there's I think I can't remember if we mentioned it before, but it was like the dead rise again. Did you ever get that?
What is this in reference to? I'm sorry.
In case one of your units gets deleted off the battlefield, like they completely disintegrate, there is a chance where you get this message at the end where it says the dead rise again.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I did get that. Yeah.
Yeah, because there were a couple times where I had like all of those 3 Vargeist were maxed out on their experience, and unfortunately I got one like it got trapped. It started chasing a unit and I lost track of it, and then it just got surrounded by the Empire Knights and it was just deleted, and I was like, god damn it. But
yeah, I had the same sort of thing where it saved a Vargeist of mine and I was just like, thank fucking god, that was a gold chevron.
yeah so that's also very useful. Didn't work on my blood knights though. But, whatever, I'm over it. Let me think. I fought. See, I didn't even fight the Skaven. Like the Skaven were. I had that blue colored Skaven faction that's in the Zufbar province to your south.
Yeah, it's gonna come to me in a second.
Yeah. They had an army, I swear to God, in Sylvania raiding my province for almost 100 turns. And I never attacked. Yeah, I couldn't. I just didn't want to go to war with them because they were actually fighting the dwarves and were keeping, like, they didn't win, but they kept them in check. Like, they're still alive now. So I just let them raid my capital. Just
they wouldn't take a non-aggression pact?
No, they wouldn't take it, but they never attacked me. They never declared war. They just raided. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not losing that much money. And I can't be bothered to fight these guys right now. And they must have gotten so much money off of me the entire game.
Probably. You're complaining about money the whole time someone's raiding you.
Well, I couldn't afford to deal with them. Like I was like, the Empire was just so much trouble. Picking another enemy was just not in the cards.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Are we through faction effects?
Yes, I think we are. We kind of just totally skipped over Vlad's history.
Yeah, I'm really confused about his lore, actually, just because it doesn't really ever, from what I found, like said, this is what happened. This is what he did. Other than the only like real concrete thing that like everything backed up was his death.
Yeah. Well, from what I've heard, there's 3 different backgrounds from him. One comes from the tabletop, one comes from the books. And I think End Times kind of modified his story a little bit, but they're definitely, that's why it's confusing, because I even went on to one of the fan wikis like before the show started, and I was getting like a totally different origin, not totally different, but a slightly different origin story. And I kind of see why when I listen to like the YouTube lores, they're always like, this is my favorite version, so that's the one I'm going to go with. Yeah.
I did find his like death really interesting. Like that's really cool, but
he had a great end time story. I hope, I don't know if there's a book on it, but he ends up like siding with the Order Tide eventually.
Nagash was like being a jerk to him, so it's just like, all right, fuck this.
Well, Nagash, no, it wasn't Nagash that created him. It was the Queen Neferata, I think.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So take it back to the Tomb Kings. He's actually related to Nagash, at least as far as I know. Not like his son or anything, but he is like blood related to him.
Oh, I just heard he was like a Nehekaran noble in one version.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. Like, I don't know for a fact, but one of the sources said he's like Nagash is like a distant relative to him.
Okay.
So he's actually, he's from Nehekar. He's been around for over 1,000 years, and he fled. I forget where he was originally, but he was unhappy with the way things were going and fled to Lamia, which is where Nagash had created the first vampires. I don't know how many there were at this point, but that's kind of where the vampire queen Nehekar was hiding out at the time. Neferata, yeah. She's the sister to High Queen Khalida.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know things.
I know things. We know things.
Yeah. So he went there, and I guess he so impressed Queen Neferata that she turned him into, she gave him the blood kiss. And and some sources I saw say that they married. Some sources say that he just was like a very talented and gifted general, and that's why she just gave him a blood kiss. But their kind of style, the way vampires worked back then is they were bordering dangerously out in the open. Like, they hadn't quite given themselves away to the world yet. But when Vlad got the gift, and even into like the modern Warhammer times, he is actually very concerned about keeping up appearances. And I think that's where like the term the midnight aristocracy comes from. Because like his goal really, from what it seems like, is he wants to be recognized as a legitimate Elector Count, or like just a legitimate leader of the world. And he actually, from what I've seen, is he actually doesn't drink blood out. He does drink blood, but he doesn't feed on anybody. The sword he carries, Blood Drinker, actually transfuses the blood of people he fights into him. So it's kind of a way of explaining how Vlad actually got away with disguising himself for so long, was nobody ever saw him feed, since whenever he fought, that was actually kind of just going on naturally.
That was his nourishment anyway.
But he made his way after he escaped Nagash, because he was a slave for a while. He gave him the One Ring, and it enslaved him. But Vlad, who was formerly known as what was his original name? Vashalesh, or
that was it. Yep.
Yeah,
Vashalesh.
or oh my god, I can't be getting this wrong. I gotta check, right? Vashanesh, I think.
Yeah.
So anyway, he realized that the ring had enslaved him, and he allowed himself to be slain in combat. And somehow, you think Nagash would have foreseen this, but the ring revived him. But when he was revived, he was no longer under the will of Nagash. And at that point, he kind of just like took off and just fled, because none of the vampires liked being under Nagash's control. The thing about being a vampire is that you are essentially a magical creature, and since Nagash is so powerful and kind of created them in the first place, he was actually able to, keep them as slaves.
It's kind of interesting, because I read that Vlad kind of manipulated and convinced Nagash to make the von Carstein ring for him.
Okay. No, I never even saw that detail.
Okay.
But
I don't know. It just confused me so much, because there's just so many different sources. So I was like, I don't know what, angle to approach. So I was just like, let's just throw it all out there.
Yeah. The one part of the story I really do like is when he makes his way to Sylvania. At the time, Isabella was the only surviving heir to Otto von Drac, who was the Elector Count of Sylvania. And at the time, Sylvania was first of all, it's kind of a shit province to begin with. Like, it's not very good for agriculture. It doesn't have a lot. I guess it has a gold mine under Kessel Drakenhof. I don't know if they knew about that at the time, but it was very mismanaged. I guess Otto himself, like all of the Elector Counts there, were considered to be kind of mad in a way.
Yeah, their entire line.
Yeah, and Isabella is too. Otto was basically so desperate for an heir that he put it out there that any man of noble birth could marry Isabella and, inherit Sylvania. And a lot of nobles came, because just because you're noble doesn't mean you're actually rich and powerful. It just means you have the blood the bloodline.
Yeah.
So a lot of them came to try and marry Isabella, but she was actually so friggin' terrifying and just out of her own mind that she scared basically all of the suitors away, which I thought was pretty hilarious. She kind of reminds me of Joffrey from Game of Thrones a little bit. Like
a spoiled brat being an asshole.
Yeah, and she's into like torture and killing. Like she's not interested in being a lady. She likes hunting and combat and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So Otto was on his deathbed when Vlad finally walked in kicked down the door, and nobody could really place his accent. Carstein was totally a made-up name, so nobody recognized it. It was just the way he reinvented himself, and he asked Isabella to marry him, and she kind of liked him at first sight, but she asked for a gift to prove his love for her or his commitment to her. And so he's like, anything that you want and it's yours. And she had a creepy uncle who was kind of waiting in the wings for his brother Otto to die. I think his name was Leopold. From what I read, Isabella was creeped out by him, and he was just waiting for her father to be out of the way. And she asked Vlad for his heart on a platter or something. But anyway, Vlad just straight up just rips the guy's heart out and hands it to Isabella. And this is like the first time that Vlad actually genuinely loves Isabella. It's kind of cool. Mm-hmm. You don't really see any of the evil races in this game having genuine relationships with each other that are healthy. I mean, not that this is healthy. But
I think that Ikit has a really good relationship with Doom Rockets.
He oh yeah, very healthy. But it's kind of cute, like Vlad actually doesn't want to turn Isabella into a vampire, and basically doesn't do it until she's about to die from a plague that's kind of infesting Sylvania. And another one of the cool things too is Vlad actually turns the province around. Like he doesn't just like start feeding on people left and right. He actually brings like order and some level of prosperity to the province, was what I read.
Well, yeah, it's like it's not great, but it's significantly better than it was under the Von Drax. Like, yes, people are being fed on by vampires, but at the very least, they have a livelihood at the same time. So yeah, like that's why the living army comes in at the same time. Like there is still loyalty, even though like it's being controlled by a vampire, and some are kind of onto that. It's not a great way of life, but it's better than it was before.
And that's the kind of thing I like about Vlad is he's not really insane. Like he does have a level of control over himself. Like there are other vampire lords that are regarded as just being totally crazy. They just feed on any living thing. Mm-hmm. And again, I just bring it back to, I don't know why I mentioned it the last time, but I was really hoping Vlad would kind of have access to some sort of elector count, campaign mechanic that the Empire does, since that's actually what he wants to rule over. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't want to kill everybody. He just wants to rule it. Yeah. Like, I remember, did you ever see, what was it? The Queen of the Damned, that movie? Has a lot of Korn music in it.
No, I have not.
Yeah. It's a great movie. It's like, this guy, he's like this ancient vampire basically picks like this rock star to be a vampire because he's like been asleep for a long time and he wants somebody to kind of explain how things are. Okay. And and at the same time, this like truly ancient, like think Neferata, like female vampire comes back from the dead, and she really finds this guy hot, or this new vampire, and she tries to take him to be her king. And he like is disgusted by how she just like views. I mean, Vlad does view people as cattle in a way, but they're still cattle under his protection. Yeah. And in this movie, like the queen, who is super powerful, just wants to feed on human beings. And she's like, you can be my king of like this grand kingdom. And he's like, what king of, like, I'll be in charge of a kingdom of corpses. Like, yeah, I need to feed on people, but it's just, it doesn't mean anything, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I found myself being a big fan of Vlad, especially when he eventually tutors Gelt in necromancy.
Oh, interesting. That is
Yeah,
I never
Gelt
said
gets in
that.
a lot of trouble for that.
Yeah, probably. I mean, Gelt's not exactly known for being by the book.
No, he's not. I'm actually excited to try. I know we probably won't do it next, but I'm really looking forward to playing as Gelt. Ever since you've talked about him. But yeah, Vlad eventually, in the end times, he dies at some point in this big battle when he tries to take over the empire. There's a Grand Theogenist, not Volkmar, but another one.
Yeah, this former. Well, yeah, a couple hundred or 1,000 years before Volkmar, for sure.
Yeah, he's losing in the battle against Vlad. But yeah, there's a story of how he gets a thief to sneak into Vlad's camp. And Manfred actually sees this. Like, Manfred is not actually asleep. He watches the thief sneak the ring off of Vlad's finger, which makes him unable to revive himself.
Mhm.
So this is kind of one of the first times Manfred actually betrays Vlad. He just kind of he's the one who notices the thief come in, but doesn't warn Vlad at all. So in this battle, this Theogenist tackles Vlad off of a wall, and they both get impaled on, a spike below.
And also Isabella dies in the same sort of
Yeah, she lets herself get killed, I think, in a way.
well, yeah, she essentially does like the same thing. She's just like, all right, fuck this shit, I'm out, and like falls off the wall.
Actually, one of the stories I heard, she actually gets captured because she breaks down, and they like hold her in the under the city for like years and years until she's finally put out of her misery. I don't know how accurate that story is, but that was one of them I heard. But Nagash, when he comes back, resurrects Vlad on the promise that Isabella will be resurrected eventually also.
Yeah, I read that like he resurrected Vlad, and Vlad was like, I don't want this unless you also give me Isabella.
Yeah, and he kind of like strings him along, so Vlad gets pissed off, and that's when he starts teaching Gelt, and actually tries to return to Sylvania and get recognized by the Empire as being a legitimate, leader.
Yeah.
But, the end times ended the way they did with it. Universe imploding or whatever the hell happened. I still don't understand.
What?
Yeah. All I hear is always all the hate for Age of Sigmar, and I kind of understand why, because it's like they forgot about certain characters, but other characters got a lot of love in the end times. But
yeah.
I don't know what else is there to mention about Vlad other than he, I mean, I think it's cool that you can tie him back to the Tomb Kings.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, vampirism itself goes back to that, and it's kind of interesting, like how much of the Warhammer world actually ties back into Nehekara itself. Like, it really speaks to, I mean, the Tomb Kings, I guess now, but how much their empire left its mark on the world, and like how it still is impacting what happened, and how Nagash specifically is impacting it.
Yeah, that's kind of the kingdom Nagash left behind because of Arcan and trying to, cast that ritual that turned the entire, basically the former kingdom into the land of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we have to look forward to under Nagash.
Yeah.
Cetra 2020.
Yeah. I actually wanted to what did you think of the bloodline system?
Yeah, let's talk about the bloodlines. I want them to do more with it, because although I do like it, it was kind of a fun thing to be looking forward to, because there are genuinely tough choices.
Yeah.
Like, because even the first tier, because you can get 3 blood kisses pretty quickly because you start with 1 right away.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, do you want the 20% casualty replenishment, which is huge because, like you said, you can resurrect your army whenever you need to, but that costs money or dark magic.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
And you having not the greatest economy, your units being more expensive, at least your better ones, it's having that high replenishment rate is very helpful. The vampire heroes give added replenishment to the army. So still, being able to regenerate almost all your forces within a turn is pretty nice.
Yeah.
Then also, you could go with 25% research rate under the Necrocs.
Yes.
Which I think I did early on.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, the first one I did was the Lamian line.
I did the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, 50% off all your heroes. Which you can get. There's the special building in Castle Drakenhof.
Yeah.
That it's called the Mausoleum of the Mad Count, and it grants extra recruit rank, minus recruit cost, and allows you to hire basically an additional vampire as soon as you build it.
Yeah, it's also a tier 1 building, so you can get it right away.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Because vampires are badass, powerful, and the more you have, the better it gets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And also,
you try all the bloodlines?
I have at least one unlocked in all of them.
Okay.
The ones I have the most, let's see. I got the second stage to von Carstein because the first one was casualty replenishment rate and the Sylvanian crossbowman.
Right.
But the second stage also gave you +5 public order to all provinces, which +5 is pretty decent.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Then the Strigoi the first stage gets you an extra 20% ambush success chance.
Yep.
Which is another very helpful thing.
Yeah, it is really good.
And then it also gives you +5 vampire corruption in the next stage. But the one I think I went towards the Necroc line first because the research rate, because you have so much to research. And but the second stage was +20 winds of magic, and the spells are so expensive. You really, anything that helped my pool of magic, I was all about.
Yeah, exactly. You're just like, oh, I can get Arcane Conduit. Please give me that.
Yeah, I'm gonna need that, and then any extra follower that would grant me some, extra. Yeah, casting a lot of spells. Invocation in the deck, Wind of Death. They're not cheap.
No, even with necromancers fully spec'd out, it's still a crazy expensive spell. Really awesome spell, probably the best win spell in the game, but damn, is it ever most of your wins?
Yeah, but it is still nice if you. Sometimes it wasn't. Most of the time, the Empire would be stupid enough to stand there if I initiated the battle.
Yeah.
Sometimes they would advance right away, which was bad. But if they stood there, you could take out a whole line of infantry or missile units in one go. Oh shit, Kislev is still alive. How many? They must have. That must be from a rebellion or something. Because I know how many. Oh, they got 3 settlements. Okay, well at least they still exist.
You're doing all right.
Yeah. God damn, was this a chore to fight through the Empire, man?
I think that the big thing too that I kind of wanted to touch on too is every battle, auto resolve hates vampire counts.
Oh my god, man.
It's just you brought nothing but skeletons and your character is essentially a throwaway to them, which is kind of shitty because in terms of actual battle prowess, your characters are really what you're focused on. That's the strength of the vampire count. And auto resolve does not take that into account at all. I don't even know if it takes in magic into account, because that's going to be a huge offensive force for you. So you're going to have to fight more battles than normal. And the other thing too is the way vampire counts play is you're getting into really grindy fights because you put out really slow damage. You just happen to outnumber them, and unless you terror route or break them really quickly with overwhelming numbers, you're in for a little bit longer of a battle for sure every time.
Yeah, it's just slugging it out, especially when you go up to Empire armies that have been ranking up, just sitting idle.
Yeah.
I think Karl Franz was only level 8, and yet he has a whole stack of great swords that are maxed out. And those guys aren't breaking.
Yeah. Like compared to Nakai, when we played last time, I played over 300 turns of him between Mortal Empires and Vortex, and I spent less time playing him than I did playing Vlad, and I only did one campaign that was 110 turns.
No, that was one thing I noticed too. It's a slow. You have to fight almost every single battle, and you have to be very careful. I mean, it does not take a lot for your whole campaign to be turned upside down, and you have to get used to these other goddamn order factions, the dwarves and stuff, just declaring war on you whenever your armies are away, and just ducking in and burning down your town or sacking it or whatever they decide to do.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite bloodline that you just like particularly liked, the Lord, or?
No, I never really leveled up. I didn't get too far leveling up any particular bloodline Lord.
Okay.
I heard the Blood Dragon line was going to be really good.
I actually found them to be kind of the weakest, like especially after the start. They have access to magic, but they don't get arcane conduit, so they're going to cast magic at a more expensive, and it's also they don't have any like bonuses to actually like keep your reserves in check. So they're actually really powerful in melee, especially if you get them on a Blood Dragon. So they're more of like a melee focused Lord than the other sort of counterparts. But
yeah, I kind of knew that a little going into in advance. I did notice they didn't have arcane conduit, so I was like, yeah, no, thank you. But making him a physical fighter, giving him another. I actually, that was the one I put like a fully kitted out necromancer in with.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually plan on. I didn't even know he had access to magic. I just kept hearing like they're great like combat Lord. So when I saw that he had,
I wouldn't even like invest skills in magic.
Yeah.
But
I gave him my necromancer, had been leveling up, stealing tech from like everybody since the start of the game. So he had some good backup.
Yeah. I like the Netrarch, to be honest, just because they have like crazy magic reserves.
Oh, yeah.
Generation. They have greater arcane conduit, and then they also have the special perks from beast magic, as well as
I saw that
dark magic. So you get like every time you cast a spell, you get like bonus to your winds regeneration, I guess. And they also cast things for like super cheap, like especially Raise Dead and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was level. I definitely have a Lord from that line that's been around the longest. I think that was the first one I actually hired. He's just been running around with some skeletons, backing up Vlad and Isabel for a long time.
Yeah,
and fighting rebellions. But I haven't really seen them like go to fruition yet. Like this campaign kind of drove me like I can't shake these negative feelings I have towards it. Like this was like my most up and down campaign where I felt like I was having a lot of fun, then it sucked, then I was having fun again. Just because I felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. I just circled around the entire empire.
Right. Yeah.
And it'd be different if the AI had like for anybody out there who hasn't played, you might want to get a mod that prevents the AI from confederating, because it doesn't make any sense. Like when Reichland is down and has no power left, why would any other faction confederate with him? And that's what it kept doing. Like it was just prolonging the inevitable. And yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I was having a lot of fun at first, and then it was like I was taking the same towns I had fought over like turns ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because it was like Osterland was never at war with me. But when I finally backed them into a corner, like, yeah, they confederated, and now I've got, Karl Franz on the entire other side of the empire coming at me where I have no armies.
Yeah, I had kind of a similar thing happen with like Weisenland. Like I got close to them, and I was at war with Reichland already, but I was kind of I'd kind of dealt with them for now. Like most of their armies were destroyed. They were kind of rebuilding. I'd taken a significant amount of their territory, so I was like, okay, I'll take Weisenberg and swoop through there, and then like continue into Reichland. And I declared war on them, and even though they had 2 armies, like a full stacks and 3 settlements that were heavily defended, they were just like, no, we want to be part of Reichland right now. I'm like, what?
I don't know why it does that, man.
I don't know either.
Yeah. Did you have any units that stood out to you that you really enjoyed using?
I like Vargas.
Yeah, Vargas they were definitely the MVP. I gotta say they're just very reliable. I mean, there's always the chance that they start chasing a unit that you didn't intend for them to chase.
Yeah.
Like, and they get dragged into some sort of bad matchup.
Yeah.
But they're
they
great.
They did try and like go back sometimes where like one would get like stuck in a unit of like handgunners or something like that, and the rest would be flying happily, but they'd just be like, no, we need to go back for that guy. I'm like, no, I can just raise him in a second. Just leave him. It's fine. I don't care.
He's our friend. We got to get him.
Yeah. And I was like, no, stop it, please. Like, you're going to wipe your whole entire unit out, you dumb fucks. But yeah, Barkers were good. I liked using the cavalry actually, just because it was like a mobile force and something to do. I don't know. Maybe that was like the reason I liked them more.
No, Black Knights are actually they're pretty sturdy unit, and they're anti-infantry. I did like them. Don't get me wrong. I've used them quite a bit before, but most of the time I had Vargeist. I always kept a unit of Crypt Horrors.
Okay.
The big giant ghouls.
Yeah.
They're pretty fun. I like them a lot.
As far as monsters infantry, I thought they sucked, to be honest.
Well, I never sent them on an engagement alone. Like, since your skeleton spearmen are like the really only anti-large infantry you have, and they still kind of suck.
Yeah.
So once, like, if I could get the the Reichsguard to charge into them and start getting surrounded, I would just have my Crypt Horrors like quickly either circle around or fight in between the spearmen. And they always seem to do really well under those circumstances.
I see.
Yeah.
My strategy was for dealing with cavalry was let them charge in and then summon a unit of like zombies or skeleton warriors right on top of them, and then they couldn't back out.
Yeah, that's pretty smart. I never used Raise Dead in this playthrough. Honestly,
really?
I saved all my wins for Wind of Death essentially, and Invocation into Heck. I finally found some use for the Terrorgeist.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it is quite a powerful anti-large unit. It does very well against cavalry. I also had I did a quest battle for Isabella for her cup, her chalice, or whatever it is.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and you have to fight a Beastmen army, and it was taking on Minotaurs like nobody's business. I was kind of surprised. Yeah, not as good as a dragon, but since you're kind of limited on anti-large options, it's actually pretty good, especially taking on airborne lords, because they were always a problem as well.
Yeah, I think even making it like a tier 4 unit would be like a huge advantage, just because like tier 5 is ridiculous with vampire counts.
Yeah,
and like one building for like just Terrorgeist is not worth it. Especially sorry, go ahead.
If you made it a tier 4 and then like the next stage of it for like undead dragons or something, I think that would work.
Yeah. If you could actually get like blood dragons, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, because you can't hire just undead dragons.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's only a mount.
I also want the blood knights to be taken down to tier 4. Or maybe a special building that you can get with, I don't know, a certain faction or something, just to make
so it's not just like minus 5% upkeep. Like, oh boy.
Yeah, I like I said, it's turn 115, and I have not hired a single Blood Knight unit to replace my initial. Like, I just, it took forever to unlock them. Yeah. So, what else did you like about this campaign?
I just liked relying on magic. That makes sense. Like that's a lot of fun. Like just being like, okay, bye. Like, or like slowly waiting for your wins to build up so you can just like wipe them all in one good go. Like it was so satisfying where you could just get like a perfect line of skeletons and they all hit you like super evenly and just line up perfectly in the exact width of a wind spell, and you're just like, oof.
Yeah.
just send it down and like just watch it stir through them, and their health bars go from like 90% to 0, and you're just like, oh yeah.
Bye. I also kept hearing your voice in my head with my my vampire girl squad, because one of them had a Pit of Shades upgraded.
Okay,
and so it was an alternating between Wind of Death and Pit of Shades, and I was just like, Pit of Shades, Pit of Shades. Like they would, sometimes they would like get in that perfect circular bulge as they're like breaking through your skeleton. Like if they get like a more powerful unit out in front, and then it's just like, oh yeah, that's gonna feel good.
Yeah. This is where the fun begins.
Yeah. I hope they do more work on the vampire counts in the future, because it kind of sucks. Like the Mortal Empire's objectives, like I've heard there's special buildings you can get as far away as Nagash or Nagashazar. Like there's which is, god damn, that feels like a million miles away.
Yeah, that's really far.
Yeah, there's a lot of greenskins in between me and them.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not super fond of you.
No. Fortunately, Grimgore hasn't declared war on me yet. But I would just like some smaller. Let's see the vampire counts on the Vortex campaign. I want to see some of that. Yeah.
Okay, if like Warhammer 3 happens and they're not in Vortex, to be honest, like I don't really need it. But what did you think of the Carstein Ring quest battle?
Oh yeah, that's where I descend like a banshee, like into the mountains to the south. Where was that? It takes a while to get out there.
It's the southern World Edge Mountains. It's all the way down there.
Yeah, that's it. It sucked because like I had to waste my banshee just going down there for I don't know 15 to 20 turns just to get there and back.
I just hired a shit necromancer because like I had enough of them, or I had enough like capacity to get more. So I was just like, all right, you can run down there and I'll disband you as soon as you get there.
That would have been the smart thing to do. I don't know why I didn't do that. That was kind of that was another battle I was pretty over leveled for, just because again, I was in my constant wars with the Empire. But you go up against the Strigoi, and it's kind of cool. Like as you're facing off, like it's a straightforward battle. You just get your two sides, but it is undead on undead. And as you defeat their units, they actually get resurrected into more powerful, higher tier units. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, it was really annoying because I had like a skeleton spam army, and he was raising Graveguard, which obviously would just like cuts through skeletons. And I was getting like really upset until like his Vlad would catch up to him and like beat his ass for a little bit, and then he'd run away, heal himself, and then just like come back with more Graveguard. It was just so annoying. I had to like tie him up with a vampire lord and some Vargheists, and then just like got Vlad to run in there and kick his ass really quick, because I couldn't win until he was dead because he just kept summoning these like way more powerful units than mine, and I couldn't keep up with healing and like damage dealing.
You just actually reminded me of one of the abilities that Vlad starts out with. It's that, what is it called? It's like some sort of gaze. I'm trying to find it.
Oh yeah, him and Isabella have the same thing.
Yeah, it basically reduces the melee attack of any unit by 40. And you can cast that thing a couple times a battle.
Yeah,
I love that. Master of Beguilement, negative 40 melee attack. Sometimes I would cast it on like the Lord, sometimes on like a unit of like cavalry right as they're about to like crash into my line.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was kind of fun to use.
Yeah, it actually did, like depending on the unit you cast it on, you can pretty much eliminate the damage they deal. Like Empire Swordsman and like Spearmen and stuff like that, like they won't do any damage if you like put that on them, because they have such low stats that like you're erasing that anyway.
No, and I would sometimes cast it just on like my Fellbats would be tying up a unit of swordsmen, and I just cast it on the swordsman. why not? Like,
Yeah, let the Fellbats just win.
So that's a powerful hex that you carry. You have the entire game. I liked it.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, like you said, Isabella has it as well. So you get 2 casts of that if they're reinforcing each other.
Actually, one thing I have written in my notes was vampire accounts have the worst voice lines in the game.
Anyone in particular jump out at you?
There was some specifically some vampire, only some vampire, like some of them were good, but there was a few lines it seemed to depend on the character where it was just like really bad delivery. It was just like the von Carstein's march, and I was like, what?
I told you it's the goth girl squad.
Oh man, it just like broke all immersion I had on the game. I was just like, oh my god, really?
No, you're right.
And the one line that always killed me was you like click on a necromancer and he'd be like, bats and wolves gather.
I never noticed that.
You're like, what are you talking about? Like I understand that most of the time when you click on a lore they say something like pretty dumb, like it's not really all that coherent, but like that one especially, I was just like, what does that have to do with anything?
That's just so dumb. I think my mind just blacked that out. Whatever said that. Maybe that's why I only had like the one necromancer forever.
Like the dumbest lines. I was like, what? Yeah, gave me a good chuckle a few times anyway. After I got like being done mad at it.
Yeah, eventually, it just fades into the background.
Yeah, you get pretty used to it.
I think the reason why I'm hoping for some sort of vortex campaign for these guys is it's the Mortal Empires campaigns are always a little difficult because you're contending with so much and you really don't have that much direction other than who's declaring war on you, and I mean, I guess it makes sense that like this would have been the end of the Vampire Wars because I did unite the Empire. Fundamentally, it was just one hell of a slog, and I wanted to see what it was like to I don't know, see how the vampire units hold up against the Greenskins. I don't think I ever fought the Greenskins. Like they kept popping into my territory, but they're busy fighting somebody else. So. Like the dwarves. So I was like, all right.
I fought the what are they called? What's that? Blue greenskin horde faction that'll pop up every once in a while.
Oh yeah. Can't remember. They're Savage Orc tribe, I think.
Yeah. They like were raiding a territory of mine and Vlad was right there and I was like, oh fuck it, I'll just like deal with them right away. They massacred me. They absolutely destroyed me. Like Savage Orcs do not give a fuck about skeletons. They will absolutely just smash them. Like it was ridiculous. It was like Hulk smash, but like there was 45 of them per unit and they just like punched the fuck out of everything I had. It was ridiculous. They moved through my unit so quickly I couldn't even cast Wind of Death on them because they just like cut through them.
Savage Orcs are no joke, man. Yeah, I was having fun with my Wurzag campaign for a little bit just because they're good, man.
Yeah. They're awesome. I was just like, I didn't need to be fighting them, and I was just like, oh man, I'm gonna have to like actually wait a couple turns to replenish after this because I jumped into this stupid battle. Fuck yeah, I forgot about that. That sucked. Don't fight greenskins.
I imagine the black orcs would be a big problem.
I didn't even fight them.
Yeah, it's easy to underestimate those, like because you're like, oh, they'll have low leadership, they'll break any moment, and it's like they just do so well in melee.
Yeah. You're just like, oh, I'll like be able to Wind of Death, and that's fine. Then I'm like, oh, my army has completely crumbled.
And what's worse is when you cast that Wind of Death and they just move just out of the way.
Yeah, it was like almost down to like Vlad, like just surrounded by them. Who I don't know how you spec him, because you did mention like regretting not going for lightning strike, but he is probably one of the best melee lords in the game.
Well, yeah, between his ring and his, I did spec him out a little bit. I did get lightning strike on my last campaign because I was like,
Okay.
I have to have it. I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But I did put a lot of skill points into just his, his combat abilities, because he doesn't get any mount whatsoever. And I kept, I just kept having him in my front line, like he was always fighting.
Well, yeah, exactly. Plus, he gets I think it's called Bloodlust, and then like the upgraded version to give him like more armor piercing damage and vigor, I think, with the upgraded one. So I don't know. For me, he never ever got wounded actually, and I don't think I ever saw him below 50% health between his like regen, his ridiculous stats, and the von Carstein ring giving him like literally 90% physical resist. Yeah, he's an absolute fucking tank, and he will take anyone to town.
Yeah, he doesn't look like it, but he does very well. I always had a white. Is it a white king?
Yeah.
Or is it just I always had a white king that I had from the very beginning, who was like his bodyguard on a barded horse. And them two together, because he would actually use the invocation and the heck on the white to like, keep him alive, because I never there was maybe like once or twice where he got like to 25%, but I never was really too worried about losing him. I also gave him I don't think I got, what did I give him? I don't think I got far enough in the yellow tree to get Bloodlust, but I did get Undeath Resurgent in the red tree, which gives everybody in range of you 16 leadership and 24 melee defense.
Okay, yeah.
And that extra leadership and defense definitely will buff up your front line or whoever's nearby. And because
I saw him. I can't remember what forum I saw it on, but he was being referred to as Chad von Carstein.
Chad von Carstein. I like that.
It's pretty accurate.
I really liked him. I'm hoping the vampire accounts get maybe a couple new units in their roster. I never used the Black Coach. I know that's a unit.
Yeah.
I hear it's good. It works well in auto resolve. I know just having it in my army, it's probably got a high combat potential or whatever that attribute is. But I've never used it, and it also just doesn't sound too interesting. The Black Coach. I don't know.
Yeah, like the only thing I actually did in that line was like throw my necromancers on Mortis Engine, because I thought it was worth it at that point. I didn't think it was actually worth it getting a Mortis Engine, because I don't know, it's just going to sit there and regen my troops and provide magic, but I could also take like another Vargeist and have more mobility, or I could just, like I said, throw it on my necromancer and have like spells in addition to that.
I do have the Regiment of Renown version of that in Vlad's army. It's the Claw of Nagash.
Yeah.
It actually deals damage around it, and it and it slows enemies. Minus 36% speed, anything nearby.
Yeah, that's fucked up. That's horribly perfect.
Yeah, I really do like having it in his army.
Yeah, that sounds gorgeous.
I keep it close to the front line, so as the cav are coming in, they just lose a lot of their impact. It's great.
Yeah, well, and they've got like a pretty wild or pretty wide area of effects, so like it'll pretty much cover your entire blob if you do it right.
Yeah. Sometimes the blob only hurts you though if they bring rocket batteries, because I sent this massive tide of like 2 skeleton armies that couldn't even get close. They just like evaporated.
No, I never ever blobbed until I'd taken care of it. Like if I was fighting a battle against a rocket battery, something was taking care of that thing before I would hide my troops if I could. Like they'd just be in a forest somewhere while my vampire went and took care of the rocket battery.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I did cheese it sometimes where I'd have just Vlad stand out there and just take I don't know, half a dozen rockets or so, just whittle them down a little bit.
Yeah.
Too dangerous, man.
This is like the only campaign where I'm like, wasting ammo is okay.
Yeah, I didn't bother with like wasting archer ammo, but definitely getting rid of mortars. Mortars will fuck you up too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, maybe a little cheesy, but
yeah, but like the I don't know. To me, you're fighting a faction, and almost purely a faction that hard counters you in almost every way.
Yeah, it does. Steam tanks were funny. It was just a bunch of like armored skeletons, like just getting flattened by them.
Well, yeah, like the only thing that could do damage to them was like heroes, and if they were on foot, they were just getting like Chuck Norris like roundhouse kicked into the next dimension because the steam tank just like smacks things away from it.
See, that's why having at least one unit of crypt horrors can be kind of useful. They do all right against the tanks.
Yeah.
If they can get close, they'll do all right. Yeah. I don't know. I keep forgetting to always ask. Like, I think one of the best questions I ever asked you is like, would you like, under what circumstances, or would you just recommend this campaign to somebody, or why would you recommend this campaign to somebody?
You want to spend 100 turns and feel like you've played 300? That is for
you. Oh my god, you nailed it, man. You love it, you hate it, and then you've like so like you said, 115 turns feels like I played 300.
Yeah.
And I've just finally, like you said, that's a conservative estimate. So maybe I did cruise through it, quote unquote, quickly.
Yeah.
But the Empire is finally united under Vlad. It's like, great. Now the game really starts.
That's almost it. You're just like, okay, now I can like do things.
No, I'm not constantly at war every turn. I can take some time and breathe a little. But now I've got like a million things to manage. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Bad Gandalf has a tougher starting position, but at least the world you're dealing with over there is smaller.
Yeah.
And artillery isn't as huge of a problem with the Frenchies. Yeah, the Frenchies over there. So maybe try Bad Gandalf, but Vlad is still very powerful in his own right. Taking cities with airborne units was actually pretty interesting. It was a nice shake-up from how I usually do things. Usually I like going heavy on artillery and missile units, and that wasn't an option.
Yeah, it was fun to shake up like the playstyle and like being forced into it.
I still wish I had some missile units. Although having those 2 Sylvanian crossbowmen, it was like, oh, finally, thank God. Yeah. So, you think we're about ready to wrap this up?
Yeah, we're through my notes. I don't have any more points to make, actually.
Well, I think you just summed it up nicely. It's 300 in your mind. It's 300 turns against the Empire.
It's turn 80.
Yeah. What would you say makes Vlad so renowned and feared?
I mean, he's old as fuck.
He's pretty fucking old.
Yeah,
he's older than dirt.
Like, yeah, literally in Nagash case. No, I think he's well renowned actually for being like a good military leader, but also being very charismatic, which I don't think we really talked about, but there's a few instances where people point out that he chose to persuade instead of just resorting to violence. Like, yes, he had a temper, but he also wasn't just a murderer for the fun of it. Like, he's not purely evil. He just kind of wants his name to be heard, which in a way kind of makes him more to be feared, in that he'll do anything to get what he wants.
Yeah, he keeps proving himself over and over again that he wants to be. It's almost like if Karl Franz just settled down and was like, okay, you're going to be an Elector Count, and give him some like maybe a Steam title, like he might actually like kind of back off a bit.
Mm-hmm.
He just wants to feel special, And I like that he's not kind of the brute force type of guy. He has a mind for strategy. Like him and Isabella like spread spies all throughout the Empire, and we're like trying to turn different electric counts against each other. Because vampires are very limited. Like we mentioned before in the lore, like yes, they can fight during the day, but the magic, which is one of their strongest, like their strongest aspect, is severely hampered. They feel weak, and like their armies suffer from being in direct sunlight. So, kind of a huge problem when half the day you're dealing with that big orange ball in the sky. But I definitely like him. I like how he's in love with Isabel. I like their background and how they actually kind of sort of rule Sylvania like reasonably well. I mean, all things considered.
Considering the previous king, yeah.
Yeah, if you're doing better than like an actual human, I guess that doesn't say a whole lot for the Van Drax, but
yeah, that just makes them look worse.
Yeah. But it's fun. It's kind of cool seeing a horde of zombies or an army of skeletons just like slowly blob up and surround, other armies, because it's almost how like I feel like the Skaven. I feel like there should be something in their research tree to reduce like Skaven slaves down to like 0 upkeep, like the skeletons. I feel like that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess pretty close, but
yeah, it gets close. But even though I think you can reduce it down to like 17 gold or something,
yeah,
I'm still like, why isn't that's what else could that money be going towards? Those weapons teams are expensive, man.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think the Graveguard were pretty cool too. I like the aesthetic of them. They kind of underperform, cool. But it's nice to have something that kind of qualifies as heavy infantry.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. All right. I'd say maybe I'd have more, but like I'm feeling like the pressure of time.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, but I'm glad we got this all said and done. I'm glad we played as them. It's been the first campaign I spent so much time with the vampire counts, and it makes me appreciate the vampire coast more, having actual, rifles and
an emphasis on ranged, yeah.
Mortars, cannons. God, I miss those things.
I think that's why Count Noctilus did what he did. He's just like, no, fuck this. I'm going to the ocean where they have shooty boys.
And I'm gonna get me some guns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right, everybody. This has been Renowned and Feared. Thank you for joining us today, and stick around for the post show because it's gonna be a short one. But I think we're gonna maybe talk about some of our future plans. We got some news, and stick around. I'll release that part of the show shortly. Real quick, I'll save that for the post show. Anyway, sure. Have a good night, everybody. Craig, get out of here.
Yuck bag.